World Championship season, and it is wet. It's not chucking it down. The rain has stopped. A shower passed through into Lagos about, I don't know, half an hour ago, but the circuit is very much damp at the moment. The risk of further rain for the qualifying session is 50%. We're expecting it a little bit later on if it does come, but we're in for a very interesting session, I think. In the first practice session earlier on, Perez was quickest, Leclerc second, Verstappen third, all separated by a tiny margin. In fact, Sainz and Hamilton in fourth and fifth. The whole of that top five was separated by less than 0.2 of a second. But we'll see what happens come the wet session. Alongside me is the Williams reserve driver, Jack Aitken, and the BBC's chief Formula One writer, Andrew Benson. And yeah, not soaking wet, but definitely damp out there, Jack.
Yeah, it's certainly damp enough that all of the hard work that they did in this morning's session is out the window and pretty much useless. So back to square one, and it's going to shake things up a little bit, hopefully.
The session will be getting underway in a little over 3.5 minutes' time, and we'll see whether I'm imagining everyone will just go straight out on the intermediates and see what happens. Maybe some will go straight out on the full wets. We'll wait and see. A reminder, Verstappen's already won the championship. The fight's on for second in the standings. Perez 5 points ahead of Leclerc at the moment, but it looked really close between Red Bull and Ferrari in free practice. Does everything go out of the window now that it's wet, or are we still broadly expecting the same order?
I think, no, it is, broadly the same order. I think Red Bull do have the upper hand. That was the feeling that we took from the sole pre-practice session before this qualifying session. But it's certainly going to make it a little bit less predictable. In the midfield, it looked quite close. And I think the drivers will have a little bit more of a risk of making a mistake as well, because you're being pitched in straight away to an unfamiliar condition. And it's when you're really being tested at the end of the day.
Andrew Benson, what's your favorite Brazilian qualifying?
Qualifying? That's gone a bit niche quite quickly, hasn't it, Jack?
Well, we're about to do a wet Brazilian qualifying.
My favorite wet Brazilian Grand Prix has to be 2003, but that's a Grand Prix.
Yeah, what a race that was.
Oh, I like 2010 when Hulkenberg stuck it on pole in the Williams.
There's the right answer. I don't know if we've had many, actually, thinking about it, but Hulkenberg on pole in the Williams was cool. Will we get something similar? It's already looking a little bit dry. Well, I guess that's under the bridge, isn't it? On the run down towards the first corner. It wasn't exactly a heavy shower.
It's going to be dry by the end of Q1.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it's under the bridge, it's not exactly the world's biggest bridge in the world. No. You can see the streaks of dry the track coming up, and when you start to get those F1 cars circulating, it's going to suck up the water pretty quickly from the track.
Air temperature 19.1 degrees, so not exactly a really hot day, but it is looking fairly dry at some points down the start-finish straight, and that's going to be a bit of a gamble for some of the teams and drivers, whether to play it safe or whether to go for it. So it still can bring up a little bit of a unpredictable element into the mix. The engine's starting to fire up as we've got about 90 seconds to go. Verstappen wasn't particularly happy with his car this morning, was he? And third quickest in the end as well.
No, complaining pretty quickly early on in the session about massive understeer from his car. Well, indeed, we saw him take a trip off the circuit at turn 4, and he continued to complain about that later in the session. They did look like they'd got a little bit of a handle on it, and he managed to set a pretty representative time later on in the session with those changes, but perhaps still not fully happy with the situation.
So intermediate tyres on the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc as the session begins, and he pulls straight out onto the circuit. Daniel Ricciardo currently sitting at the wheel of his McLaren and not heading out just yet, still on the radio as he now, I think, gets lowered down onto the ground. In fact, we've still got 30 seconds before the pit lane opens, so Ferrari very keen to get out there and get to the end of the pit lane. Everybody else, or a lot of others, just waiting in the garage, perhaps to see what tyres everyone else is going out on. It's the two Hasses that are at the end there on the intermediates. I'd be amazed if anyone goes out on the full wets in these conditions.
What some of them might be insuring against is in case that there is another shower that comes over fairly soon and makes the track slower for the rest of the Q1 session. They want to get their time in now while the conditions are fairly good, pretty close to slicks, even if they're not slicks yet. Just don't want to be caught out with those changing conditions.
Session is underway. For those of you syncing up, we've got 17 minutes and 50, 49, 48, 47 seconds on the clock. Out goes Schumacher, Gasly, Stroll, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Leclerc. But meanwhile, there's still only tyres going in Hamilton's car now. So a lot more chilled down at Mercedes compared to Ferrari. Well, I say Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, because Sainz hasn't gone out of the pits yet. It's just Leclerc who's super keen to get out and get cracking. Here's his radio.
Rain expected in how many minutes?
10 minutes.
So Leclerc and his expecting rain in 10 minutes. Some saying that some not expecting rain until the next half hour or so. So that's very different opinions on the weather forecast there.
There's always a margin of error with these things, and especially in Sao Paulo, it seems like every time we come here, the weather has a tendency to have a bit of a mind of its own. So they can't have full confidence in those, and that's why, like I said, many of the teams will be sending the cars out early just to be on the safe side. Because do you really want to take a risk by leaving it to the last minute and then seeing that shower come earlier than you predicted?
No, is my answer.
Track looks quite dry. I copy that.
Sainz saying the track looks quite dry. He has now left the pit lane, a little bit behind Leclerc. Mick Schumacher is just starting his lap. There's barely any spray coming off the back of the cars at all as Leclerc comes up into Junsao and then gets on the power. A little bit of a wiggle, but yeah, there's really barely any spray at all from Leclerc's car as he comes around the final corner. A bit of a rooster tail there, but broadly speaking, it's very much a wet circuit, as in there is wetness, moisture there, but it's almost dry into turns 1 and 2.
It'll be an interesting question to see if anybody makes the jump to slicks, because the track does look like it's going to be ready for it quite soon, and the earlier that you get onto that tyre, the earlier you can start to build temperature and confidence with that slick, and it kind of snowballs and you get more and more confidence, and people who come out a lap later or 2 laps later on that slick have to do a lot of catching up. Because, yeah, as you say, it looks damp as we're on board with Leclerc here, and there's the odd little spray kicking up off the tyre here and there, but they're really just patches, aren't they?
Yeah, really, really dry out there, relatively speaking, compared to Suzuka anyway, a couple of weeks ago. But the first, big moment there, coming down through Pinarino for Charles Leclerc, back end stepping out as he now comes up into Bico de Pato, the tight right-hander at turn 10, then on the power and down through Mergulho. Through the first sector, Leclerc's done the fastest middle sector. Lance Stroll has done the fastest first sector of anyone in the session so far. Magnussen does a lap time of a 19.8.
We believe the final corner may be the wettest place.
That's Ricardo's radio being told that the final corner, which I presume they mean turn 15 rather than Junsao, is the wettest place. Leclerc goes quickest at 1 minute 19.191. And I guess Alonso and Ocon are still in the pits in the Alpine, so maybe they're fancying a straight out on slicks kind of vibe. I don't know. 14 minutes and 20 seconds to go.
Of course, the downside to going early on that slick option and trying to build that temperature like we spoke about is if the rain does come down before your slicks are up to temperature, you're completely stuffed because you've just wasted the last 5 minutes on those slicks trying to get them up to temperature while everybody else is getting quicker, and that could be a real issue.
Less than 14 minutes to go. Leclerc still quickest. Norris comes into second place, 3/10 further back. Stroll is third, 4/10 back from Leclerc. Perez is fifth, half a second away. Verstappen's on his outlap now, and Ocon has left the pit lane, so he's left the pits. Alonso is still in the pits, but I would imagine he will depart the pit lane imminently. There he goes now, out onto the circuit. Gasly jumps up into second place now, just a tenth of a second or so behind Leclerc. Russell's 3/10 up on Leclerc in sector 1. Hamilton reporting on the radio that it's quite slippery, but these lap times will come down and down, and it's how long these intermediates will be good for in this first part of qualifying as well, because they can, if the track's dry, they're going to get eaten up quite a lot.
Yeah, you would have thought that the Inters will have seen their best before you get to the end of the session when the track should be at its best. And Be interesting to see if the Alpines, for example, that have stayed in the pits until just now, might benefit as a result of keeping them a little bit fresher for a little bit longer, because we're not seeing anybody on the slicks so far, and it might just be too big of a risk to ask at this stage.
Leclerc improves and goes quicker still. He's a tenth ahead of Carlos Sainz, who's into second place now in the Ferrari. Hamilton's 1.4 seconds down after the middle sector. George Russell was a good chunk up sector 1, but as he comes across the line now, he's only 5th quickest after the rest of the lap. So quick first sector for Russell. Sainz now improves to do a quick first sector. Hamilton is the fastest final sector of anyone, but he's down in 12th place with that lap, Lewis Hamilton. So at the moment, eliminated would be Albon, Latifi, and then no lap times yet for Verstappen, Ocon and Alonso, but Verstappen is coming through the final corner, just 800ths down on Charles Leclerc, has a few twitches on the rear as he gets on the power and comes out across the line, and Verstappen is going to go back to the top of the times here, and he does, a 1 minute 18.495, so gained a couple of tenths on the Ferraris in the final sector, but Norris is the quickest man on circuit. Sainz did a quick sector 1, but is now backed off in the middle sector, so Lando Norris is on a push lap. He's a driver who's done well in the wet before. You think back to when do I think back to Spa? That was it, Spa. When we had the race that was not a race, he was looking absolutely rapid till he admittedly ended up in the barriers up at Rouge. A lot of sparks as he came down through Maguglio there. That was quite surprising to see, and the car's really sliding as he comes through Junsao. Hamilton 7 tenths down on Verstappen after the middle sector. Alonso is now the quickest man on circuit. It's just going to get quicker and quicker the whole time here.
Yeah, those Inters are already looking a little bit stressed, shall we say. And yeah, Alonso being quickest is a sign of that fresher tyre paying dividends.
11 minutes to go. Hamilton jumps up into 6th place. Let's not forget Hamilton, there was a lot more running with this. It was a whole Grand Prix, wasn't it, pretty much in Turkey when he ended up on the slick intermediate, as Perez now jumps up into 2nd place, and that is just 8,000 slower than his teammate Max Verstappen. But Alonso now goes fastest on a 1 minute 18.412. So those fresher intermediates doing the job for Fernando Alonso as he goes to the top of the time. So the order is Alonso, Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Norris the top 5. Then it's Sainz, Ocon, Hamilton, Gasly, Bottas the top 10. Russell, Tsunoda, Joe, Stroll and Ricciardo are the 15 drivers that would make it through as it stands. Eliminated would be Magnussen, Vettel, Schumacher, Albon and Latifi. Gasly is pitted. So everyone now will be keeping an eye on Pierre Gasly to see what tyre the Frenchman goes on to. That can only be for a set of slicks, surely. Well, maybe a new set of Inters, but interesting choice there. Tsunoda pits as well. They were both out at the very start, those two.
Both of the Haas cars have been into the pits as well. I'm not sure if they've taken on any new shoes already. They have. So yeah, it does look like it's still too wet. It's not drying up as quickly as we expected here. Still quite a bit of spray, especially in the final sector. But the Inters are only lasting for 1 or 2 laps before they start to get cooked. A big slide there from one of the Ferraris.
That was from Leclerc. Magnussen was then all over the circuit on the exit of turn 6 and 7. Leclerc backs off. Russell's on a good, goes 4th.
Still Inters, I think. Some bits are very dry, some bits damp. I'm destroying these tires very quickly, I think. Yep, okay, understood.
Norris saying we're destroying the tyres very quickly, and it is going to be the soft tyres for Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri. So new soft slick tyres for Gasly. Let's see what he can do. Strategy has not been great so far this season for AlphaTauri necessarily, but what has Pierre Gasly got on the slick tyres? Across the line comes Magnussen to go 3rd quickest, and that's on a new set of intermediates. So you got to get some new tyres on, but which ones?
Or it doesn't even matter. It might be that the slick and the Inter are fairly evenly matched by the end of the session, but you're going to have to make a decision, and especially for the top contenders now that should be getting through Q1 safely. This is the moment when they have to play the odds a little bit and almost make the safe choice.
Hamilton's on a quick lap. He's coming through the middle part of the circuit, dropping down through the left-hander of Pinarino at turn 9, then climbing up the rise into Vico de Pato, and he's currently going quicker than Max Verstappen. Verstappen had just improved his lap time to a 1 minute 18.2. The drivers around him keep out of the way. Hamilton through the middle sector split now, and he's up still by 300ths on Verstappen, but he may well lose that time down the start-finish straight. Oh, Gasly's got no grip at all. We're just watching him on board coming through the right-hander. I think he's on an outlap at the moment, to be fair, so he's not fully pushing, but had a lot of wheel spin as he tried to get on the power. We'll keep an eye on Gasly. He's about to start his lap time. Hamilton to the top of the times, just over a tenth quicker than Max Verstappen, but so much wheel spin for Gasly. He's fighting it all the way up the hill.
Yeah, it's going to take a couple of laps at least for him to get that tyre up to temperature, and he's going to have to pray that it doesn't rain. You can only assume that on the radar they're not seeing any rain if people are making the switch.
Ricardo looks like he's coming in for some soft tyres. I think he's got sent to the weighbridge. Gasly onto the brakes into turn one, through the left and then the right at the Senna S, and then through Curva de Sol. So tentative on the throttle as he came through there, Gasly. Now comes out onto the back straight down towards Tocino del Lago. It's only a quarter of a second away from Hamilton in the first sector, so you get the feeling Slicks will the tire. Well, we've got a whole rest of the lap though to go, and where's it going to be wet?
Remember, the final sector is where it's wettest on track at the moment. More and more teams coming out into pit lane now. Ferrari out with a set of slick tyres. We're not sure for who just yet. Gasly now getting into the second sector of the track, and he's not looking too bad here, but a big slide as he goes through turn 7 and nearly loses the car completely on the exit. Well saved, but this is where it's really, really challenging for him.
His teammate Tsunoda has gone up to fifth quickest in the other car, but Tsunoda went out on a new set of intermediates rather than the softs, and Gasly's 2 seconds down here on Hamilton. Now, the thing is, what do you do at this point? Do you commit to it? Because in 6 minutes, you'll be up to temperature and you'll understand it, and everyone else will be out on the softs, or this is a tough one. This is a really tough call for the teams and drivers here.
It's only 1.5 seconds. I know it sounds like a lot, but on a track like this where time is dropping all the time and those slick tyres getting hotter and hotter and getting more into their operating window.
Here comes the fastest first sector.
He's got a lot more confidence already. He's happy to squeeze on that throttle when he wasn't 1 lap ago.
Fastest first sector of anyone for Pierre Gasly. Kevin Magnussen got his lap time deleted for track limits at turn 8 a little bit earlier on. At the same moment that Carlos Sainz got all out of shape, but Gasly's flying now in the middle sector. He's coming to the tricky part where he lost time before in that middle sector, the tight and twisty infield, but no signs of him losing pace at the moment. As he comes through there, he's still up on everybody else. This is the tricky part for Gasly, coming through Pico de Pato, but he's still nicely on the power, down through Mergulho, and now is the time to get on the dry tyres through the middle sector. Bottas, he's 1.8 seconds up on Bottas, but that is ultimately still going to be the fastest lap time here of the session for Pierre Gasly, the Frenchman who got a podium here, didn't he, in that drag race towards the line right at the end of the Grand Prix a few years ago, his first Formula One podium, I think it was, and he now goes to the top 4/10 quicker than Hamilton. Everybody now will be in the pits, everybody will be going on to soft tyres, and we're in for a very, very interesting last 4.5 minutes, because if you don't get your lap in here or you get a lap time deleted, you're going to be in trouble. The Ferraris are in the pits waiting around for some tyres at the moment with 4 minutes and 25 seconds to go. They're double stacked as well.
They weren't expecting this. They weren't expecting the slick to work so quickly, and it's taken them ages to get the tyres out. Leclerc impatiently waiting, and everybody's trying to react, but
I think they had some used softs ready, but they've decided they need to get new softs, and they're trying to get them out, but they're still not. This is a bit of a shunt here for Ferrari.
Sainz is even worse off. He's still got to go behind Leclerc.
So
Border Gasly now as he's going through the wettest part of the track. Whoa! That was a big, big slide. Seriously sideways coming out of Junsao, the last real corner on the track. And it's at a point where normally you are 100% flat out, no problems, but this is a very different situation. Damp track and slick conditions, but he managed to keep it out the wall.
And that was the lap he set his fastest lap on, but he's about to improve here, Pierre Gasly, out of the final corner and up and over the line. And how much time does he find? He finds a second. Goes a second quicker than he'd managed previously, Gasly. So the lap times now in this last 3.5 minutes are going to just tumble and tumble. Hamilton is out on circuit. Leclerc and Sainz are now out on track. Bottas is still in the pits, and Norris has done the fastest middle sector of anyone in the McLaren, as he too has a little bit of a slide trying to put the power down. Latifi goes up into 11th. Albon goes up into 2nd, but 8 tenths slower than Gasly, and that's only by virtue of being the second driver to set a soft lap time. The bad lap from Latifi. Norris goes into second, 6 tenths down on Gasly, but Gasly's got the extra lap compared to everyone else under his belt.
So the drivers that are now currently on their outlaps, which includes Leclerc, Sainz, and Perez of the top, from the top teams, as it were. Those are the guys that are going to have to work extra hard and get the tyres up to temperature quickly. We saw that there was a bit of a delay with Gasly to getting them into their working window. The track is drying, which is going to help them, but they still have to make sure they get this right. There's only 2.5 minutes left, so there's not a lot of room for error.
Vettel is to Alonso now goes quickest on a 1 minute 16.177. So it's Joe, Sainz, Vettel, Bottas and Magnussen eliminated at the moment. Shortly, the two Ferraris will both be in the drop zone because Vettel comes through to jump up into third quickest. If anything happens now, the two Ferraris would be eliminated in Q1. 2 minutes to go. Maybe a red flag would do it, but they might be able to restart the session. But any yellow at the final corner. Latifi to the top of the times at 1 minute 15.969. Penultimate race of his Formula One career is going out in style. Norris now beats him though by a second and a half. Latifi second. Verstappen now slots into second place on a 1 minute 15.6. Verstappen 1.3 seconds slower than Norris. Sainz has done a good first sector. Leclerc's got traffic here, and it's the AlphaTauri of Yuki Tsunoda, and he's not able to get ahead of him. So this isn't going to be, it's going to be an improvement for Leclerc, but not as much as he would have wanted. Perez is now on the drop zone in 15th. He's back top.
He's going to have one lap to do this.
Tsunoda, come on!
Leclerc frustrated about Yuki Tsunoda. He's on a quick lap, I think, here, Tsunoda. So he wasn't on a back-off lap, and now the Ferraris are right together on circuit. Sainz is going to jump up the order here, surely. Yes, Sainz goes up into third place. So Perez is now in the drop zone, along with Leclerc, Joe, Bottas, and Magnussen. Albon is setting the fastest lap of the session so far as he comes through the middle sector. Gasly jumps up into second position, but it's all or nothing on this lap now for Charles Leclerc. He's got a clear track ahead of him. Tsunoda's on the bubble in 15th place. Magnussen jumps up into 7th place. So that puts Tsunoda out and down into 16th position. Albon goes fastest. A 1 minute 14.324. We are surely going to get a bit of a surprise going out in Q1 here because everyone is improving. Here comes Bottas across the line. Bottas only goes up to 15th. He will get another lap though.
Perez here could be one of the first to cross the checkered flag, and that is a disaster in a condition like this because everyone's going to be getting faster. 3, 2, 1, 0. He's going to take the checkered flag. He's the first to cross the line, and it's only into 6th place. Is that going to be enough for him?
So Perez into 6th. Ricardo goes up into 5th place. Here comes Charles Leclerc, who looks as though he's going to do enough to jump up the order. Joe comes up into 7th position. Alonso goes quickest now. Here comes Leclerc. He's currently last, and he goes up into 5th. That should be enough to see him through. Hamilton has dropped down to 18th place, so he needs to find some time. Stroll's on the bubble, as is Latifi. Everybody is still improving. Vettel into second position. Hamilton through the final corner. Big snap of oversteer for Hamilton, but he gathers it all up and gets back on the power. Gasly running in 4th place. Schumacher only 18th. Tsunoda's out. Schumacher's out. Stroll's in trouble. Hamilton goes fastest. A 1 minute 13.403. So Latifi's in danger. Verstappen's in a bit of danger here. Latifi comes across the line. Verstappen gets shuffled out, but he's got a clean run to the line and he gets back up into 4th place. So Joe is knocked out. Latifi's on the bubble. It's all about Lance Stroll. It's going to be the same old people that get eliminated from Q1 after all of this. Here comes Lance Stroll and he jumps up the order. So it's Latifi, Joe, Bottas, Tsunoda and Schumacher that are eliminated from the first part of qualifying. Not a huge surprise after all. I really thought we were going to get a bit of a shock in there somewhere.
Well, it was there. It could have happened so easily if there was one mistake from anyone on that last lap. But the contenders all got their laps in, and Ferrari just about avoided another strategy scandal.
14th for Sainz. That wasn't far away.
Well, he was held up by Leclerc, wasn't he? He was stuck behind him when he abandoned his penultimate lap. So it's very lucky that they both managed to squeak through there.
Yeah, the order ended up being Norris got Hamilton at the line. Norris, Hamilton, Alonso, Vettel, Perez, the top 5. Verstappen, Magnussen, Albon, Gasly and Stroll, the top 10. Russell, Leclerc in 12th, Ocon 13th, 14th, Sainz 15th, Daniel Ricciardo eliminated, Latifi, Joe, Bottas, Tsunoda and Schumacher. But goodness me, what a frantic session that was. Ferrari just about getting away. I'm surprised they had so little pace. Here's Schumacher's radio.
Why did we didn't get through?
No, we didn't get through. There was 15-1 to get through.
What?
Just didn't come enough time. Sorry, man.
Schumacher was miles away from the pace. He ended up on a 16.3, which is 1.4 seconds away from making it through. Now, they did a couple less laps than everyone else. I wonder if it was that second run on the new intermediates. Everyone who did a second run, bar Magnussen, were 18th, 19th and 20th. So I wonder if the time loss is Bottas's radio.
And unfortunately, we are out.
Yeah, I made the wrong call with injuries.
Well, there we go. That's the thing. They went out on the intermediate tyres, a new set, were very quick, but ultimately those laps were irrelevant, and then they were later onto the softs.
Yeah, it was a critical decision, wasn't it? And when you are late to get the slicks in, you just, it's not just that you're losing the opportunity to set another lap time, it's that temperature that is so critical that you have to build, and it takes time, and it can be 3-4 minutes out from the end of the session, but it'll just be too late. So yeah, a bit unfortunate for them, but on to Q2 now. There's still a slight threat of rain hanging around, but it does look like it's at least going to start with slicks and could well stay that way as well.
Well, Ferrari were expecting rain about 7 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, that's Ferrari. What does Twitter say?
Said a Williams spokesperson. Yeah, so everyone in the grandstand currently doesn't have their hoods up, broadly speaking. Some of them do, some of them don't, but it's certainly not delugeable yet. DRS is now installed for these next laps. Andrew Benson, BBC's chief F1 writer, are you entertained?
Well, you know your strategy's bad, don't you? Reserve driver from another team's trolling you on the radio.
You should hear what Giovinazzi says about Williams, though. It's brutal. What did you have any actual thoughts on that session?
I just wanted to roast me.
I did want to do that. The one thing that did strike me at one point during the session actually was this may not be relevant going forward, but it struck me because it was a reflection of something that happened.
Yuki, it's a joke, eh? It's a joke. What the hell?
That's Leclerc annoyed at Tsunoda, but to be fair, Tsunoda on that lap was on a push lap, so I can't imagine he'll get a penalty for that. But do continue.
Yeah, it just wasn't a very quick push lap.
No, exactly.
Leclerc was probably confused. No, there was a moment relatively early in the session where the Red Bulls and the Ferraris were out at the same time, same conditions, and we saw the same pattern as we saw in first practice, where the Ferraris were absolutely on the Red Bull pace up to the end of Sector 2, and then I think it was Verstappen pulled 2 or 3 tenths on him up the straight to the finish line, which obviously doesn't bode well for Ferrari's pace generally, but also doesn't bode well for any competition for Red Bull in the race, because if they can be that quick round the lap and have that advantage down the straight, it's hard to see how they're going to get beaten.
Well,
if that's the way it plays out.
Yeah, but they'll just pull away in the middle section. It'll be fine. That's how it works.
Not since Austria, Jack.
Well, yeah, that's true. So, look at Lando Norris, who ended the session quickest, ahead of Hamilton, Alonso and Vettel. There's a nice second, third and fourth lineup. But Norris on it again in those sort of changeable conditions. Going 2 seconds, pretty much 1.8 seconds quicker than his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. They did the same amount of laps. They were on the same strategy, sort of full stop. So really good stuff from Lando Norris. But now that we're into it will be dry, but it will still be drying, right? These conditions will still be changeable in Q2.
Yeah, it's not going to be 100% back to the standard and the grip that they had in the practice session earlier today. And you can see even in the pit lane there are still some damp patches around. So it's going to be a case of building all the way through the session and finding their references and dialing the car back into a track that is going to be very green.
So we need to get a lap on the board early. You need to push hard out of the pits.
I think Aston Martin think that rain is coming.
Sounds like it.
We need to get a lap on the board early was the message to Lance Stroll. And so everybody getting very keen to head straight out onto the circuit. Some going out on new tyres, like your Norrises and your Vettels. The Red Bulls going out on their same set of softs as before. The same is true of Leclerc and Sainz. So some of them going on new tyres, some of them going on used tyres, with 14 minutes and 6 seconds left on the clock. And there are, a few splashes on the exit of Pinarino and on the exit of Junsao. So we'll see what happens. The two Aston Martins were at the end of the pit lane, so they were super keen. Just having a look at the radar, and sort of coming into half past is that, well, maybe a little bit beyond half past. Maybe it looks like the time from my very quick glimpse at the radar, but there does appear to be showers converging on Interlagos. I can have a great conversation with a cloud, I think.
I can believe it. And we have Max starting his lap now. One of the many that were queuing to get out of pit lane, keen to get out there and set a lap time, get a benchmark in. Looks all fairly hunky-dory through this first sector. It was one of the first corners to dry up in the previous session, so no issue there. Looking quite confident and assured. Coming up now to turn 4, where he had his big understeer moment in practice earlier on. He's purple in sector 1, quickest of all so far. Flirts with the white line on exit, but keeps 2 wheels on it. No issue with track limits. Into turn 6 and 7 fast. Double right-hander, leaning the car over, not taking too much of the exit curb on the way out. Might still be wet over there. Does have a nibble of the apex curb in the technical sections of turn 7, turn 8. Looking very neat and tidy so far. And into the slightly wetter section, the second half of the lap now. Still some damp patches around, but still keeping the things very neat, very tidy. And into Yunsao, purple sector 2 as well. A little bit of a slide from the rear on the way into the last corner, but all fine on the way out. Looks pretty calm and collected.
Norris has gone 3/10 quicker than Verstappen in the middle sector. Here comes Verstappen through the final corner. Gasly's quickest at the moment, but Verstappen beats that comfortably. But Norris is still going quicker. Here comes the McLaren man, and he goes to the top of the times. 1/10 of a second ahead of Max Verstappen. Gasly in 3rd. Magnussen 4th. Stroll 5th. Vettel made a mistake and is down to 7th. Sainz jumps up into 3rd spot now. 3/10 away. Perez can only manage 6th quickest in the Red Bull. Verstappen now sets the fastest first sector of anybody. Here comes Charles Leclerc, and it's 5th quickest for the Ferrari driver, slower than Pierre Gasly. Ricciardo across the line in the McLaren. He only goes 9th fast. Only the Aston Martin slower than Ricciardo. Here comes Alonso. Russell goes up into 9th place. That becomes 10th because Alonso goes 3rd quickest. Hamilton in the Mercedes goes up into only 11th position for Hamilton, where Albon goes up into 4th place. So quick lap that from Alex Albon, only 3/10 slower than Lando Norris. So there the Mercedes are going again, but there is quite a lot of different speeds going on out there. And Verstappen was quick in sector 1, but he's not improving overall here. Andrew?
Just on the Mercedes, Jack, just remember that all year Mercedes have been having problems getting their tyres up to temperature. The one time that didn't happen was when Russell put it on pole in Hungary, but generally they struggle. And the drivers were talking yesterday about being a bit, obviously it's not raining right now, but it is sort of cool, dampy conditions. But they didn't know how it was going to if it was damp this weekend, because there have been races this weekend when it's been wet and cooler when they've been really quick, and races when they haven't been. And the answer to why that was always been tyre temperature.
Very interesting lap times coming in here, because Verstappen went again and didn't improve. He was 2/10 slower, but Kevin Magnussen has just done the fastest first sector of anybody in the Haas.
There's a bit of rain on my visor for turn 4 in the last sector.
Understood. We don't see any rain on the radar at the moment.
So Ocon saying it's raining on me. The team saying, well, we're not seeing any on the radar, but it's raining on him. 10 minutes to go, and Magnussen is still going very quickly in the middle sector. On the power out of Pico de Pato, down through Mergulho, and through the middle sector. How far away is Magnussen from Norris? Only 600ths of a second. So this is going to be a decent lap time here. Well, it was going to be, but a bit of a moment for Magnussen halfway through Junsao, and took him a while to get back on the throttle, and that'll cost him all the way up the hill. Stroll jumps up into 10th place. Magnussen still goes up into 4th position. Norris improved in sector 1, but didn't improve in the middle sector. So the front runners are not gaining much time here. Alonso's on a good lap.
Yeah, they're all kind of they're having quite a few goes at this. Normally you would only do the one lap on the soft tyre, but given the cooler conditions, they're all just pounding around and trying to get a little bit more out of it while the track is still drying.
Here's Russell's radio.
It's spitting a little bit. I think we're risking it too much here. So we just need to get time on the board with the new tyre.
So Russell saying we should pit for a new tyre, get a time on the board before the rain comes. No one's done that yet. Everybody is out on the circuit, and Fernando Alonso is coming out of the final corner. Remember, this is all about being in the top 10. Russell has pitted. Alonso is getting a lovely little slipstream from the car ahead, and he goes to the top of the times again, a 1 minute 11.394, and it looked as though it was raining a little down the start-finish straight.
So Jack, with the Mercedes on their used tyres from the first session there?
I believe so.
Yes, they were.
Right, that would explain it then.
Russell on a used tyre, Hamilton on a used tyre, Perez, Sainz, basically the top 3 teams were on a used tyre for the start of the session. 8 minutes and 20 seconds to go. Albon jumps up into 10th position. So eliminated right now, Vettel, Ricciardo, Russell, Stroll and Hamilton.
It's looking very dark and gloomy, isn't it? Feels like it's going to rain, but Verstappen's got a lovely tow here from the Aston Martin. It's going to be a good time.
Here he comes, and it is a 1 minute 11.3. So he goes quicker than Fernando Alonso, only by 700ths of a second. Leclerc's improving on this lap as he drops down the hill through Mergulho, then through Junsao. He's 300ths away from Verstappen, but he's not going to get a lovely stream and doesn't have the lovely slippery Red Bull in a straight line. So I imagine this will drop away a little more. Might be third or so here for Leclerc. It is third, a couple of tenths shy of Verstappen's time. It's definitely raining on the run down towards the first corner. There's no doubt about that, as Stroll is now coming through the middle sector. So if the rain comes down now, Mercedes are stuffed with Russell in 13th and Hamilton in 15th. Stroll is improving. He's in 14th at the moment. Ricciardo is also back in the pits. Alonso, Norris, Magnussen, Sainz and Ocon all in the pits. So the top 10 order as Stroll loses a bit of time in the middle sector. He's only 400ths up. I'll wait for him to come across the line just to check he doesn't improve and then give the order. Verstappen's radio.
Yeah, it's definitely getting darker here. A bit of rain, like a bit of drizzle.
And into the pits comes Stroll. Stroll pits instead of improving. So the order, the top 10, Verstappen, Alonso, Leclerc, Norris, Gasly, Magnussen, Perez, Sainz, Ocon and Albon. Eliminated as it stands, as the rain maybe is coming down, Vettel, Ricciardo, Russell, Stroll and Hamilton.
So everyone's coming into box now, and it's obviously just reaching that tipping point where it's gone from a little bit of drizzle that you can handle it. The tyres are almost going to evaporate that straight away, to now actually starting to affect the grip level. And it'll be interesting to see how many of them take the new slicks straight away and try and get out there and set a time.
Russell is improving. He's pretty much matched Magnussen's first sector time, which is the best of anyone. And I think he's going to be up here on Verstappen after the middle sector. He's neck and neck with Max Verstappen after the middle sector. Gets on the power. This should be enough for Russell to at least jump out of the bottom places at the moment. Here he comes out across the line. Russell currently 13th quickest, and he goes up to 3rd quickest. So that's a bit more like it, but it just all depends on what the track conditions will do in the closing stages of this session. Because if it gets better, they're going to be in a worse position because they'll have used their tyres. If it gets worse, they'll be in a better position because they got the lap times on the board.
On board of Hamilton now as he dives into the middle sector, and it's still looking pretty good grip-wise. I mean, it dropped down a little bit, and certainly we're still seeing rain on the cameras, but it's not gone into that stage where it's horrible and slippy and losing all confidence from your tyre. He's doing okay. He might get a tow here. No, the Aston Martin ducks out of the way before Junsao. He's only 3 tenths up on Ocon, which would put him around, what, 5th? 4th or 5th?
Yeah, not a huge lapping coming here from Lewis Hamilton. compared to his teammate George Russell. Not sure he'll quite get up as high as Russell did. Oh, he gets up to 4th place. So there we go. Good lap that in the end from Hamilton. 3/10 quicker than Ocon. 5 minutes to go. And Mercedes have run their lap on their new set of soft tyres. So that is, maybe they can improve if the track improves. They've still gone quite, they need a lot of, they're 3rd and 4th, so it's not terrible, but it's still a bit risky in the position they're in now, having run their new set of softs.
It was almost more of a risk, the position that they'd left themselves in with both cars in the knockout zone.
Yeah.
And rain is starting to fall. You sympathise. They kind of had to play their cards a little bit earlier than ideal. They should still be okay, even if people start to improve at the end here.
Sainz is reporting that it's raining a lot, and he is in 10th place, Carlos Sainz. The order is Verstappen, Alonso, Russell, Hamilton, Leclerc, Norris, Gasly, Magnussen, Perez, and Sainz. Sainz saying it's raining, and Lance Stroll is improving. He's on the power now, coming out of the... he's just coming down in towards Junsao. His teammate Sebastian Vettel is coming out across the line and is not going to improve on this lap by quite a margin. Stroll is losing a bit of time as he comes out of the final corner. Did a personal best in Sector 1, personal best in Sector 2, comes out to the line now, and he doesn't improve. So that is a bit of respite for Carlos Sainz, but Vettel is on an improved lap through the first sector. Perez is improving also. Sainz isn't improving on this lap, and he's backed off, in fact. So Sainz has backed off.
Yeah, he may feel like he wants to get a little bit more space from the car in front when he saw that his lap wasn't going to be the one that would improve. And he's taking it very steady here. Be worried, don't want to let the temperatures drop too much. You know, track temperature is over 20 degrees lower, just to give you a reference from where we were earlier on in practice. It's down at 27 where we were at 49 earlier on.
Verstappen's on a new set of tyres and is improving. He's done the fastest first sector of anyone. So there's definitely grip in Sector 1. It's sort of the end of Sector 2 and Sector 3 where maybe some of the lap time starts to go away a little. Vettel is up on Sainz, and Sainz is just starting his lap now. Norris is finding time in the middle Sector 2. So although it's a little grey and gloomy and drizzly, the lap times still seem to be coming in on new tyres. Here comes Vettel, he's up into 8th place, so Sainz is knocked out down to 11th. Perez was the next driver in danger, but he's jumped up into 3rd place. Norris goes up into 2nd position. Verstappen improves to go half a second clear of the rest of the field. Sainz, Ocon and Albon are all improving though, and that means Gasly, Vettel and Magnussen are going to be in trouble. The 2 Mercedes are still there in 5th and 6th, so they're looking okay as it stands. As Hamilton, but he just did another lap and didn't improve. Russell is improving on this lap.
Sainz is looking good. He's purple in Sector 1 and he's improving so far in Sector 2 as well. So it looks like this will be good enough to put him well out of reach of the elimination zone.
Leclerc jumps up into 2nd place in the Ferrari. So that's a good lap from Charles Leclerc. George Russell comes through to improve and get up into 3rd spot. The sound you can hear now is Sainz in the Ferrari coming to the line, and he goes 2nd quickest, fractionally slower by 9 thousandths than Max Verstappen. So eliminated now would be Gasly, Vettel, Magnussen, Ricciardo and Stroll, with Albon on the bubble in 10th position. And at the moment, only Magnussen improving. But we've got 90 seconds to go, and everyone, I think, is going to have another run at this. I don't think anyone's on a flyer right now. I think everybody at the moment is backing off, bar Kevin Magnussen, or Ricciardo just starting his. But broadly speaking, I think it's going to be the next laps that will be the quick ones, in theory. Magnussen opens the DRS. He goes into 7th place. So Hamilton now gets shuffled down to 9th position. 1 minute and 6 seconds remaining here. And at the moment, Verstappen, Sainz, Leclerc, Russell, Norris, the top 5. Eliminated would be Albon, Gasly, Vettel, Ricciardo and Stroll. But they've all got one more lap to come.
Not seeing as many green sectors now. These tyres are starting to go beyond their best. So it's going to be difficult for people to improve, especially with that little bit of drizzle hanging around. But they're recharging the batteries now, letting the tyres cool down a fraction and going for it one more time.
Verstappen pits, Albon pits from 11th place. So that's an interesting one, because he did a cool down on that last lap. Albon did a 1 minute 41, but then has come into the pits at the end of that. So that looked like it was going to be the last push for Albon, but obviously not.
It looks like he started pushing and just felt the grip wasn't there in the tyres and just decided that was it. We've got a replay now on board with Vettel as he has a little bit of a lock-up. Not a big one, but just couldn't quite slow the car down into turn 1.
And I just wonder, Stroll had the same thing actually. So both Aston Martins went off at turn 1, and I just wonder whether Albon got caught out by one of those, or well, probably not both, but maybe he had to back off because of one of those, or he made a mistake down at turn 1 as well. But he's not going to be making it through, and I don't think it's going to change at all. Gasly across the line stays 12th. The Aston Martins have made their mistakes, and Ricciardo's pitted, so that's it. We're done for Q2. Albon 11th, Gasly 12th, Vettel 13th, Ricciardo 14th, Lance Stroll 15th. Another qualifying session in the wet for the Aston Martins, although they made it through to Q2, to be fair, where they've been knocked out in Q1 quite often this season. But we're in for a very interesting fight for pole position here, because the top 3 again for Steins Claire separated by less than 7/100ths of a second. Incredibly tight.
Extremely tight. And there's still this little bit of uncertainty around the weather. It's still incredibly dark out there. And that drizzle is still coming down on the circuit. It's not stopped. It's not been enough to tip the tyre choice over into winters. And the track still looks dry, but it's just bringing that track temperature down. The tyres are harder and harder to warm up. It's not easy out there.
Daniel, just having a look at Alonso and Gasly going side by side with Pico de Pato. They were right old squabbling for position. Not sure if they were both on a quick lap or not. Alonso tried to hang it all the way around the outside at Mergulho. Didn't pull it off. Gasly covered the inside. And Alonso, so they must have been on a prep lap. And then Alonso backed off, but he was so slow through that final apex. That would have taken him a long time to recover that. But he still managed to make it through. So advancing. Verstappen, Sainz, Leclerc, Russell, Norris, Alonso, Magnussen, Perez, Hamilton, Ocon. And it's a tough session this for Mick Schumacher. We discussed it a little bit in free practice earlier on, and you know there are good times and bad times for Schumacher. Sometimes he out-qualifies Magnussen and does a good job. Then next thing you know, he's in the barriers at Dunlop Curve at the end of FP1 after the session has ended, and then he does well again, and then he's a long way off again. And in a world where the decision's getting made this week, that's a tough one, I think.
Yeah, and the worst part is he almost sounded pretty shocked that he was out there. He didn't really know where that had come from, did he? He was expecting to be through with the lap that he'd done. So it's a different story if you make a mistake and you know where the time's gone, than the one where he's clearly finished lap, thought it was decent, and been told the bad news by his engineer.
So a couple of minutes now until the final part of qualifying gets underway. Daniel saying, F1 on the radio at dinner time. What are we all having? I'm making duck ragu. Legs, not Pico de Pato. It's very, very good, Daniel. I don't think I've ever had duck ragu. Who knows? Matt had a very nice fish pie, and second Lesmo has had vegan haggis. Interesting. It feels like haggis is all meat, right? So how do you make a vegan? I don't know. Fair play.
Substitutes?
Well,
Jack,
obviously.
a hamburger is all meat. You can get a veggie burger.
Agreed, but agreed. I take your point, but you don't. But like,
Stop digging, Jack.
No, but my point is, haggis is so meaty. Like a hamburger, you also have the cheese and the butter and the chips and the, you know.
I'm gonna have to side with Andrew here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, okay.
Your logic doesn't quite play out.
But okay, but it's second lesson. I want to know what's in a vegan haggis.
Going back to Mick.
What's the outer? What's the lining?
I'm as lost as you are, Jack.
Because no one makes okay, you can't buy a vegan haggis lining just off the shelf. Like the mince meat is like
clearly it exists.
Corn
somewhere.
mince or whatever in the middle, I can accept. But what are you using for the lining?
Edible polythene.
You're the one who looks silly now.
Going back to Mick Schumacher, it does look like to be fair to him, he was hung out a little bit to dry as the team took quite a while to bring him in for the slicks there. And he was one of the unfortunate casualties of just making that decision a little bit too late.
I think Ricciardo, too, actually was one of the first drivers to cross the line when the checkered flag came out. So I think everyone else got sort of one more lap on him compared to Ricciardo in that first part of qualifying anyway. Second part of qualifying, I don't think he had any notable issues, and he ended up in 14th place. So, I mean, it's still Verstappen favourite for pole position, isn't it? Even though he's only topping it by a couple of thousandths.
Yeah, it's interesting that the gap wasn't a little bit bigger then, but I think the Ferraris managed to set their time in slightly more favourable conditions. So I would still say Verstappen is favourite for this final session, as long as they get the track position right, execute everything that they need to do, that the weather doesn't throw any strange curveballs. But Ferrari is doing well to stay in the fight in second and third from Q2.
Cameron's having meat-free bangers and mash. I'm pleased with how many vegetarians and vegans we got listening. Welcome to you all. Stu G says, I made duck ragu once. Well, I shouted duck and then threw some ragu at people. Might not have actually happened. Stu G's hit and miss with his gags. I like them all, but sometimes they get good reactions, sometimes they get bad. But keep it up, Stu G. I like it. Right. Cloud passing over down at the at turn 3, and there are sort of breaks in the cloud and some clear blue sky at points. Christian Horner is standing pensively in the pit lane, pondering the incoming weather.
Storm's coming.
Yeah. And Lauren Mekis as well, the racing director of Ferrari, is also lurking in the pit lane to try and sense what the weather's going to do. But I think whatever happens, everyone will go out and get a lap on the board, because you're just getting the 2 runs in this final part of qualifying. But are you going to get track evolution the same way? You know, is it going to be worth a couple of laps on the soft tires? Is the track going to be getting better more than the tires are going off? We'll find out. Session about to begin. Everybody, in fact, they've all headed to the pit lane at the earliest possible opportunity. The session doesn't start for another minute, actually. It's another minute before the session starts, and everybody is queued up. Here's Carlos Sainz's radio.
Why do you wait? I'm telling you to go.
That's Carlos Sainz saying, I want to get on track. Why did we wait?
Yeah, he wants to be ahead of that queue to avoid having any issues with traffic, being able to get as good a warm-up as he can with those tyres. It's going to be so critical. It's a short lap already. It's damp, it's dark, and everything's making it harder. The first corner. Are those inters on Leclerc?
It's inters on Leclerc. It's inters on Charles Leclerc.
There's nobody else on inters, is there?
No.
Everyone else is on slicks.
Intermediates on Charles Leclerc. Here's Verstappen's radio.
Rain is incoming.
Is that a gamble then? Have they taken the? They're going to try and set a time when it's as little rain as possible.
But if there's no rain, they'll be slow, and then
they're aiming for that sweet spot, aren't they? They think that a little bit of rain's coming. That's bold.
It's a huge gamble. It's a huge gamble, especially when you're Leclerc and you're going to be at the front if you do what everyone else does. You know what I mean? Here's Leclerc's radio.
Am I the only car on Inters?
Oh,
Yes, we believe you are the only one on Inters.
interesting. Goodness. When it is not raining at the moment, but look, who knows how this is going to pan out.
It might also be that they feel that in this little brief interlude that we've had since Q2, that drizzle has been enough to rob a bit of grip. And it still looks very dry. I think they've got that wrong.
Wow, this is big stuff from Charles Leclerc. I just have to say this. Chris says vegan black pudding also exists. And come on, that doesn't make any sense. But you can buy vegan black pudding. Bizarre. 11 minutes and 11 seconds to go. And we'll see what Ferrari are doing here, because they've gone out on the intermediate tyres, only with Charles Leclerc. Here's Hamilton's radio.
The weather is inbound, so have to go for lap 1.
But
so Ferrari have got the next 2.5 minutes basically.
They need a lot of rain, don't they, in the next 2.5 minutes?
It's possible. And look how slowly he's going to keep those inters alive. He doesn't want to burn them up on this outlap, so he's just trying to preserve them as much as possible.
And I tell you what, everyone behind Leclerc could get a bit scuppered here. We could be in a Sonoda Leclerc situation earlier on. He gets on the power, and Perez is right behind him, and Perez is going to have his work cut out to try and get past him. In fact, he might be able to make a move into turn one.
He's made a meal of that, surely, Perez.
And Leclerc, he's waving, and he doesn't know whether to pit or not. The team didn't know whether to pit. He crossed the pit entry line, waving his hand, and I can only presume that's some terrible communication at Ferrari. We'll have to wait and see. But Leclerc is in big trouble here. Coming through Curva del Sol. We'll wait and see the lap times. Verstappen an 18.3 in Sector 1. Charles Leclerc comes through Sector 1 0.6 of a second slower in a couple of corners.
And Perez is equally in trouble because he's stuck behind a massive slide on the exit of turn 4. He got all over the curbs, Leclerc, and just managed to scoop that up. And he's still going. He knows he has to finish this lap in case it does rain. This might be his best lap. But Perez is stuck behind him and there's no way past. He's still pushing on because he knows as well this might be the driest lap that they get.
Leclerc is the slowest driver of anybody in the first sector. Kevin Magnussen goes to the top. He's the first driver to set a lap time, a 1 minute 11.674. And I tell you what, no one's actually beating Magnussen at the moment. Here they come out of the final corner. Verstappen drives towards the line. Sainz goes second quickest, slower than Kevin Magnussen. Verstappen comes across the line, and he doesn't beat Kevin Magnussen. Perez comes through the final corner now. He's managed to get ahead of Leclerc. Leclerc is going to come into the pits now, but surely it's going to be a little too late. Depends what the weather does. Across comes Perez. He doesn't beat Kevin Magnussen. Here comes Ocon, he doesn't beat Kevin Magnussen. Here comes George Russell out of the final corner across the line, and he doesn't beat Kevin Magnussen. He goes third quickest, George Russell. Lewis Hamilton comes through, only goes seventh, doesn't beat Kevin Magnussen. Lando Norris in the McLaren is going to be the last driver to come across the line in this first run. Cuts the timing beam now. Guess what? Doesn't beat Kevin Magnussen. The Hamilton is on provisional pole position. Here's Leclerc's radio.
There's absolutely no rain for now.
Raining at turn 12, we believe. Box now, box.
Nice one. Let me finish now.
And just when you think maybe Ferrari, and in the gravel is Russell. George Russell's in the gravel for Mercedes. He's beached it, and it's a red flag. With Kevin Magnussen on provisional pole position and rain incoming. And he's off up at the top of the hill at turn 6 and 7 at Ferradura.
Exit turn 4, isn't it?
Apologies.
Not clear. The GPS is jumping around a bit.
Looks like the top of turn 7 to me, but we'll wait. But I think you might be right. It could be down at turn 4. Magnussen returns to the pit lane, and he's on provisional pole. If the rain comes now, Haas will take their first ever Formula 1 pole position if it chucks it down.
It's amazing. But it's 8 minutes still to go in the session, so if it doesn't rain in this interlude, or if it doesn't rain any harder, there is still plenty of time for things to reset. You know, Ferrari could have another crack at this, but what a shambles. I mean, and George was just on board with him. He's desperately asking the marshals to push him out, but I think that's going to be curtains for him. He's very deep into the gravel. But what a shambles. First, making the call, taking that massive gamble to put Leclerc on Inters, the only car to do so, and then to give the radio call too late to get him into the pit lane.
So I think at the start of that, I said, who knows how this is going to go? Bethany tweeted in, everyone knows how this is going to go. So, I mean, this is some more. Here's Leclerc radio.
Did everybody complete the lap on 6?
Yes, they did.
Nice, beautiful.
Does there come a point where okay, provisional grid at the moment, and it's raining in the pit lane. Russell's out of the car and out of the session. Magnussen is on provisional pole. Verstappen is second. Russell third. Despite that red flag, might be fine for Russell, honestly.
Yep.
Norris fourth, Sainz fifth, Ocon and Alonso 6th and 7th, Hamilton 8th, Perez 9th, Leclerc 10th. Now, of course, this is where the sprint falls apart because everyone will just shuffle back into their normal positions and we won't have an interesting grid for Sunday, but we won't get bogged down in that. What happened to Russell up at turn 4, Jack Aitken?
So he's coming in. He
on the grass.
Straight away. So he had his outside wheels on the white line as he went in, not quite on the grass, but then as soon as he hit the brakes, he had a snap from the rear and a lock-up from the front simultaneously from that wet paint went straight on. He managed to keep it in a straight line, bounced horribly over the gravel. It's very, very thick gravel there. Tried to do a spin turn, but he ended up with the rear of the car in the gravel and the front of the car on the tarmac runoff.
I think he's just lost it on the runoff, hasn't he? I think he's tried to turn left and carry on, and then hit the power and lost
just wet. Yeah. Ah, that's horrible. So, yeah, just completely helpless from a driver's point of view. Once you get your rear wheels beached like that, there's nothing that you can do.
So the thing about Ferrari, guys, is that Leclerc's been saying in interviews for the last few weeks, well, yeah, the championship's gone and we're a bit disappointed about that, but we really want to use these last few races of the season to learn going into next year and not make the same mistakes again, improve our strategy, improve our management, improve our communication.
And it's fair to say that they had been, I think.
And he was saying yesterday that we have improved on that front, and here we are. And this is the point I was when I heard him say that yesterday about how they'd improved on the strategy and communication so far, I thought, well, that's fine, but it's easy to do it, or it's easier to do it when there's nothing at stake. You know, when everything from the season's gone. It's when there is something at stake.
When there's pressure.
Well, exactly.
Like
when
what tyre do we choose?
Like what tyre do we choose for a wet session?
Because it's happened twice in this session, let's not forget.
Remind me of the first one?
When they were all in the pits and they were running around getting tyres and...
It's just the same old Ferrari problems that we've seen all year so far, basically, just a repeat of them. So it just suggests they haven't learned.
Let's have a look at this. This is the onboard of Magnussen as he...
Okay, Ken.
What position are we?
You're P1, mate.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. I've got to buy everybody dinner if we're going to shout tonight.
You're kidding. You're kidding me. I've never ever felt like this in my life, guys.
It's not over yet.
Don't celebrate yet. Don't celebrate yet. Come on.
It's not over yet. It's not over yet, Kev.
Oh, that's cute.
Bless. Well, I think we're all hoping for a K-Mag pole, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is still drizzling. It's not really up to the intensity from the shots that we've seen, but...
session will resume in 2 minutes.
Yeah, and now that we've had those few minutes of just constant drizzle...
I think it's good to Steiner on the phone. It looked like he was on the phone. Probably to Gene. Hi, Gene.
Are you watching?
Yeah.
You should
Gene,
be.
Gene, put the telly on, Gene. I used to do that to my mum.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. Now when they head out, because everybody's going to try it for sure, is it still dry enough to use those slick tyres? Can they get them to work? If not, are they going to have to sit and wait in the pits and just cross their fingers, everybody except Kevin, basically, and just hope that it stops raining and that it dries out a little bit, especially this man, Charles Leclerc.
So session begins in 90 seconds. The order: Magnussen, Verstappen, Russell, Norris, Sainz, the top 5. Ocon, Alonso, Hamilton, Perez, and Leclerc, the top 10. And the cheers you can hear are because the cameramen have managed to find one Haas fan in the grandstand.
So I've got a question here. How did that happen?
I'd like to be honest.
He's quite good, Magnussen.
I know he's good, but he's not Verstappen good or
the
Russell
order behind him is relatively normal, isn't it? It's Verstappen, Russell, Norris, Sainz, Ocon, Alonso. That's all pretty standard. It's not like the whole grid's mixed up. It's just one outlier, which is Magnussen.
It's just remarkable.
We have to see the onboard.
Yeah.
Wow. Session's going to begin in 45, 44, 43 seconds time. Bottas was on pole position here last year. Verstappen before that in 2019. Can Kevin Magnussen take his first Formula One pole position? I think he's had a couple of front rows, hasn't he, Magnussen? Oh, he's had a third. He's had a couple of second rows. I should have just looked it up before saying it out loud, but session's about to get going again. Haven't seen much of the rest of the track yet, honestly, and it's not exactly hammering it down.
We did see Leclerc. He doesn't have tyres on the car yet, indicating that they're
a shocker.
They're not going to go straight out, and it is raining a little bit harder now. In fact, nobody's attempting to go out as it goes green.
He's been fourth on the grid on 2 occasions. 2014 Australia, which was his first race, wasn't it? And later that year in Germany, where I think he then pinged Massa into a roll. And it's intermediates for Perez. Perez going out on intermediates. He's down in 9th place, but the team's obviously, and it is wet. It is wet out there. All of the Haas team members are in the pit lane. Almost every single one of them are in the pit lane, just looking up at the skies. Everybody else is in the garages. It's wet. We've got 7.5 minutes to go. Is Kevin Magnussen going to hang on here for one of the pole positions of all time?
Chris Stevens of Twitter says that Magnussen did get a pole position in his short IMSA career more recently, but this would be his first single-seater pole since his title-winning Formula Renault 3.5 season in 2013.
Crikey.
Nearly 10 years ago.
Crikey. 7 minutes and 10 seconds to go. Everyone's in the pits, apart from Perez. So all the Haas team are just standing, and they're all just looking at the screens.
And Kevin too. Look at him in the car. He's fixed on that TV screen to his right.
Goodness me. What a day this could be for the Haas squad. We've had their ups and downs, no doubt about it. Since they joined Formula One, they were, I think, third row of the grid for their first ever race back in the day.
With Grosjean.
Yeah, with Grosjean and Magnussen, with the teammates then. Never had a podium in Formula One yet, but are they about to secure a pole position in the same changeable conditions, different circumstances, but to go with a sort of Nico Hülkenberg pole in 2010? What are some of the other wild wet poles we've had? Perez is back into the pits.
He's straight back in.
This is happening. This is happening for Haas.
It's far too wet. Even if it stopped raining right now, everyone was out on track trying to get a dry line coming through. I don't think it would happen in time. The track wouldn't be quick enough. I think they've done it.
Right. Hashtag BBC F1. Get us into...
Gunther's still on the phone.
Yeah, Gunther's still on the phone. And it must be to Gene Haas. I was speaking to... I think we're going to see a lot of Gunther Steiner on the phone to Gene Haas in the upcoming season of Drive to Survive. But all of the Haas team are just biting their nails, and the crowd are cheering. And you can hear the crowd cheering. Never has 5 minutes and 40 seconds of no cars on track been so exciting.
All the Haas crew are just trying to hold back the smiles, aren't they? Just trying to wait until they're absolutely sure, and switch to scenes of Leclerc walking up to the pit garage, still got his helmet on, which is never a great sign of mood for a racing driver, being consoled by Lauren Mekies.
Is it will count as a pole, won't it? Because of the rules this year. So this will count as a pole. Imagine if it didn't. That's why it would be stupid, the rules last year.
They fixed it, didn't they, for this year?
Hashtag BBC F1, wildest pole positions in Formula One history. Like I say, that Hülkenberg one in 2010, there must be more that I can't quite think of. I can't think of any crazy poles at the moment. Verstappen's out of the car. They're just chatting to Helmut Marko. They'll still line up second on the grid for the sprint tomorrow. Passed him out Nardo in 2012 at Spain, but he then won from pole. So, and the Williams was quite a good car. So it was a shocker, but it wasn't.
Yeah. Also, it wasn't actually pole. I mean, it was pole, but he didn't qualify fastest because Hamilton did, and then he got disqualified.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think about crazy poles, Benson?
This has got to be right up there, hasn't it?
Hasn't
this
it?
is amazing.
And we still don't have an explanation. How did he do it?
There was some...
do you know what? I bet when Kevin gets out of the car and they interview him on telly, he's laughing in his helmet at the moment as he knows what's going to happen, shaking his head. I bet you he doesn't know how it happened either.
He's looking at the camera and crossing his eyes and punching the air, and the grandstand are on their feet applauding with no cars on track, just waiting for a clock to tick down. This is the most anticipated clock countdown since Countdown.
I mean, we have 3.5 minutes to go as Lewis ventures out on track just to have a look on the at the interconditions. I am going to be that guy and point out, if we finish as we are, Haas will have a bookend grid lockout of Kevin on pole, and unfortunately Mick will be right at the back, which is a bit of a unique situation in Formula One. Rare that you get that.
Bernard says Barrichello Spa 94 in the Jordan was a random wet pole position. That's a good one. And Andrew points that out as well. And Ollie says, will this be the first Danish pole position? Pretty sure it will be. I can't think of...
no one springs to mind.
No. And George Russell is waving to the crowd on the exit of turn 4.
Yeah, it's very. You can hear the wheel spin from Hamilton there as he's just having a very, what looks like a very casual look at the circuit, to be honest, just to get a feel for things in case it is indeed wet for tomorrow's sprint race, which forecasts are suggesting is more than a possibility.
2 minutes and 20 seconds left on the clock. Angela Barnes has tweeted in saying, just parked outside my gig, can't go in till I know there's a K-Mag pole. We got 2 minutes and 10 seconds to go. Hope you went on at 8, Angela, although you're going to be in trouble. But into the pits comes Hamilton. It's too wet out there. So we've just got 2 minutes. Well, the thing is, you were sort of waiting till the checkered flag, but now Hamilton's back in. Haas is starting to celebrate because surely it's done, because no one can get out and do an outlap and a lap in time. Hamilton returns to the pits and the crowd in the grandstands are on their feet cheering. Probably need to wait another 40 seconds, so it absolutely can't be done. Let's face it, it's a pole position for Haas and Kevin Magnussen ahead of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. He'll start the sprint from the front, jumps up onto the cockpit of a car, slams the halo and dives into his mechanics. And Kevin Magnussen has qualified on pole position in the Haas, his first pole position, Haas's first pole position. And they'll start the sprint tomorrow from the front of the grid in an absolutely wild lap from the Dane. Absolutely superb. And embraces all around in the garage. We'll be with you for another 9 minutes or so here on the BBC Sport website, and hopefully we'll bring you Kevin Magnussen in that time. I think he's going to be quite happy. Now everyone's saying, look, you've got to go out and get interviewed. Gunther Steiner is waving to all of his guests, and he's getting a huge cheer from the crowd. He and Magnussen have a huge embrace. This is one of the moments of Formula One history. This is one of the moments of Formula One history, as Kevin Magnussen takes pole position. In years to come, it'll be Hill winning at Spa in 1998 and all those kind of random occurrences, and this will be one of them.
And let's not forget, Jack, at the beginning of February, he didn't even have a drive. He wasn't even a Formula One driver. It took Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine for Kevin Magnussen to get a Formula One seat. And here he is now on pole position, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, Jack, could it?
No, absolutely not. I remember... And Kevin Magnussen's just getting briefed on what happens now, because who knows? He doesn't know. I'm a steward, his press officer is on it, knowing the procedure, because I doubt that...
I wonder if he had to Google that quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Or call the Mercedes PR and say, guys, what do we do, please?
I was so happy to see that. I mean, as a team, they've been through a hell of a lot over the last few seasons, and as we said, he didn't even have a drive, Kevin, at the start of the year, and such a nice guy, such a talented driver. He's been to America, he's won races there, he's had a stellar junior career and a stellar career in Formula One.
He still races sports cars with his dad, doesn't he? I think they've just decided to enter something next year.
I think they're doing the Dubai 12 Hours together next week or so, after the end of the season, yeah.
And I always remember when Palmer first joined the team, Jolyon Palmer, and I was saying, who's the best guy to go out with on a night out in whatever. He was always like, okay, Marcus Ericsson, and we'd be a bit surprised, but he'd say K-Mag's pretty decent as well. So there we go.
Multi-talented.
Yeah, exactly. But no, lovely guy, Kevin Magnussen, and he's making his way back up to get interviewed in a couple of moments' time. And that's taken a bit of the pressure almost off the Ferrari chat, but that still obviously will still exist.
That has not taken the pressure off Ferrari.
Not pressure, but it's taken the spotlight off it for the next 5 minutes till we go off air.
Charles Leclerc should be starting this race probably second on the grid, if not on pole. He could have gone converted.
That looks quite right. I copy that.
Question everyone wanted to know the answer to, and people are genuinely asking. There's no lining in this vegan haggis. It's just lentil, oats, sunflower seeds, carrots, mushrooms, and Marmite for flavour.
Vegan haggis.
I'm just saying that everyone's like, what was the answer?
Here, and you're obsessed with your vegan haggis.
Kevin Magnussen stands on the scales. And he just did a phenomenal job. I think that's the other thing, because he was first on track. So maybe the rain got a bit heavier. A high five with Max Verstappen. A thumbs up and a high five with Francois Sicard. And we are now going to hear from the top three. I think we're starting with Verstappen. They're speaking to Naomi Schiff down there in the drizzle. And we'll start with
Max,
Verstappen.
not a lot you could have done out there today. Red flag was not really in your control, or the weather. You're typically famous, though, for your outlap. So is there something you could have done to get a better lap in the beginning?
Well, we knew that it was going to be that one lap.
I think we're risking it too much here. I think we just need to get time on the board with the new tyre.
That, of course, cost me pole today, but still, compared to the proper, opposition for tomorrow, it's looking good. And, in these conditions, anything can happen, and we are still up front, which is the most important.
Well, talk to me about the conditions. It was constantly changing out there. Just how much of a challenge was it for you guys?
Yeah, it was difficult. I mean, you have to find, the limit of how much you can push, but then also, you don't want to have big mistakes and potentially drop out. So we just stayed calm from Q1 to Q2. Then Q3 was a little bit more of a lottery, but nevertheless still on the front row.
Okay, well, you've mentioned that you haven't really been able to take big risks in sprint races before, but with the championship drivers as well as constructors in the bag, can you have a little bit more fun out there tomorrow?
I will always try to have fun, but I think the approach should always be the same. But yeah, let's see how competitive we're going to be tomorrow in the race, but also the weather. I mean, I have no clue what's going to happen, but that makes Interlagers always very special.
And unfortunately, we are out.
Yeah, I made the wrong call with injuries. So.
Tough one out there today. Looked like the escape route was a little bit more wet than you expected.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, firstly, happy to be P3 and massive congrats to Kevin. I mean, what a awesome job he did and Haas, and they truly deserve it for all the efforts they've been putting in. And P3 obviously not necessarily where we want to be, but a very good place to be starting for tomorrow's sprint race.
Well, the weather seems to keep changing. You like these conditions, being British, so are you looking forward to the race tomorrow?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's our best shot at trying to finish ahead of Max and Red Bull, is to have some mixed conditions. I hope it doesn't get too bad so the fans can still enjoy the racing, but nevertheless, I think we're ready to have a good couple of races.
Okay, well, good luck tomorrow. Congratulations, Kevin. Your first ever pole position in Formula One. Describe to us the feeling right now.
I don't know what to say. I mean, it's the team put me out on track on exactly the right moment. I mean, we were the first out in the pit lane, and did a pretty decent lap, and we're on pole. It's incredible. Thank you to Gene Haas and Günther and the whole team for this opportunity. I got back this year after a year out, and it's just been an amazing journey. So thank you, and tak til min familie derhjemme, Louise og Laura. Fantastic.
Well, so I'm sure they're watching on with a lot of pride. I'm sure you didn't expect this morning when you woke up.
Not even close. I mean, it's incredible. Thank you.
Good. Well, it looks like a great feeling. Tomorrow, though, you've got a race. You're starting on pole position for the first time. What's your strategy? 24 laps. You've got to just make your car really wide.
Yeah. Maximum attack.
Good.
Let's go for something funny.
Good. Okay. We'll go and enjoy tomorrow.
Right, well, that's the question, isn't it, Jack Aitken? Can he win the sprint?
He'll have to be hoping for some interesting weather, I think. It's going to be tough if it's all things being equal. I think he mentioned there that a big contributing factor to him getting that pole was being first out on track and getting the best of the conditions before the rain started falling. So he's going to have a tough fight to keep those guys behind him tomorrow, but we're all going to enjoy watching him try.
He's got the biggest smile you've ever seen, and he was definitely tearing up during that interview with Naomi Schiff, and I think that's why he just wanted it to end as soon as possible. And I was just like, yeah, maximum attack, yeah, thanks. But maybe, I don't know, because it's only 24 laps. Overtaking is doable here, though, in Sao Paulo. That's the tough thing. And with Verstappen behind, but can Russell in the Mercedes get ahead of the Haas? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm excited. Andrew Benson, you got to know the headline on the BBC Sport website now.
I'm trying to write the report, man. You can't have me commentating at the same time.
We're only on air for another 30 seconds.
All right, what do you want to ask me then?
What's the headline?
I don't know. I haven't written it.
Magnussen storms to first pole. You can have that.
I've pulled the stuff out of the locker. I've pulled stuff out of the locker
that's
for
quite
the
something.
report.
It's quite
I've tried my
something.
hardest.
This is quite something,
It's,
though.
it's
pretty
brilliant.
special.
It's amazing. It's stunning. It will go down in history.
Yeah. Well, join us for the sprint tomorrow. Don't forget, we've also got free practice 2, which is going to.
It'll be just as exciting as what we've just seen, I'm sure.
Exactly. So make sure you join us for that. But we get underway tomorrow afternoon with free practice 2 and the sprint. Magnussen on pole position. Verstappen second, Russell third. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Thank you for joining us on a historic session.